Hey folks, Jason here with Dirt Race Life. Well, I've got the car back home, got her jacked up here. After our last episode, I was pretty bummed out because we hit the wall half a lap into the hot laps. It was all on me too. Looking back at it, just driver error. Had the car way too free and didn't realize it, and went into the turn thinking it was gonna stick. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking because it didn't stick. Here, check this out. So what happened was the car slammed into the wall in the rear first, and then it turned around and immediately just pulled the front end over and slammed the right front into it. I want to show y'all on the back because the design of the car, the way I went with it, I'm really happy with how this turned out on the car's ability to absorb that impact. So check this out. If you followed along on this build, you know that I did this rear with like subsections that would allow for collapse while maintaining the integrity of my chassis. Of course, my down tubes coming off the halo are actually running into the frame right at the rear wheels, and then I've got an inner frame that is just for the fuel cell to protect it. Then I've got this outer frame right here that holds the structure around the fuel cell cage, and then the rear bumper is attached to it. And if you'll look here, you can see I hit that wall and I hit it really hard right here. Ooh, don't rub that, Jay. That's sharp. But anyway, I hit that wall really hard right here. It folded in, and I can see some paint breaks right around here. So it actually twisted it a little bit on the subframe right here. The subframe is perfect, but the actual tie-ins just twisted a little bit as well. But I'm looking, and what I'm looking for is any cracks in the paint or anything. This substructure right here, nothing, absolutely nothing. It did what it was supposed to do. It folded that down, folded that in, but like I don't have a crack in the paint anywhere. Also, when I built this car, I straight lined that rail where it's just real easy to see. It's still perfectly straight, and you would see that twist. This one's the same way, perfectly straight up through there. Another thing to look for is in your tube, look for a little bit of like a dent. So like when it pushes over, where this tube connects right here, where that weld goes around it, you'll see it make just a little bit of like a dimple. Like the paint may not even be cracked, but if you see a dimple right there, that's telling you that's moved. And of course, in this case, I've got nothing. And what that's from the way that this is triangulated with those tubes running back into my chassis there and then down like this. And even if this had folded, then I'm still separate from what controls the squareness of the chassis. All of this is in front of any attachment points for any of the suspension. And my fuel cell cage is separate from it as well. So I would have just cut that off at the plates. In this case, all I've got to do is I got to go through here. I'm going to take a torch and just whack these off. I got these 3/8 tie plates right here. I'm going to chop that off. And this right here, I've got the numbers wrote down to rebend it and make it. So I'll just make another one, stick it up there, weld it up, throw some paint on it. So overall, as far as this car's ability to take a hit and not damage up into the chassis any more than it needed to, very happy with how that went. All right, let me show you what's going on with the front. It's bad. So check this wheel out right here. It completely folded the lip in on itself down into the rim and stuff. And how bad the wheels tore up will tell you a lot about how hard a hit your car took. Whew, that was rough. The good news is I didn't lose the tire. The tire is fine. And you know, we're at the point now where the tires cost more than the rims. And that's sad, but I'm not going to get into that debate. Anyway, yeah, so like the way we tore that up, we took all the hit right on the bottom of the rim and it shoved straight into the bottom, which actually I got a little bit lucky because like that helped to protect, like I didn't hit my steering box. I don't have any damage on these tie rod ends or something or anything. Now we're going to take everything off, go through it, make sure nothing's bent. But you know, good rule of thumb, if I haven't twisted the arm on the spindle and I don't have a bend in my tie rod, then I likely have not hurt my steering sector or anything else either. You know, if all this stuff's bent up on the steering controls, you better be looking at your box as well. You've probably hurt it. But what it did it hit the wall, the camber in the wheel, it shoved right into the bottom, pushed the spindle, bent the ball joint up real bad, and then just folded this lower control arm. That tubular part, it just folded it up. It had, that pressure had nowhere to go. That's actually a good thing, because one of the things that I talked about in my build, I want the bolt-on parts to fail. You know, I don't want to lose my frame. I don't want to have, you know, like a front, you know, clip that I'm having to replace because I built all of this way too beefy. I would much rather replace these parts, and that appears to be exactly what happened. So we'll go through and look at that stuff as well, get all of this back together. First thing I'm gonna do though, I'm gonna go ahead and throw that rear bumper on, and because I gotta get that done, because I'm waiting, and hopefully tomorrow all my parts will show up for the front and we can get all this stuff put on. Woo! I figured that was still straight. I'm gonna cut it off and reuse this piece right here. One down, one to go. The wind's blowing out here, so I had to break out some sticks, do a little arc welding here. Got this all, got me some lineups here where I can get all this lined up correctly. Chip that out. Get all this apart. There we go. Oh, pads still look good. Look real good. That's a whole season. That's those Black Hawk, yeah, Black Hawk DTC 30s. That's what those are. Really good pads. I'm gonna show y'all. All that hit went on the bottom. And I was like, see that right there? See how smooth that is? I know good and well that upper is perfect. Like there's no problem there. And you don't feel it, because you'll feel it like like when you rotate it, it'll bind and pop over and get easy again. That's telling you that it's bent. Whenever it'll get tight, and then like if you could go far enough, it'll get easy again. And that's what happens whenever that shaft across there gets bent. But yeah, but I am gonna unscrew the ball joint and take it out and go through it just to make sure. Get this bottom one knocked loose here. Now that one is ruined. Oh. There it goes. Oh yeah. And I think the spindle's gonna be ruined too. Man, my cat is throwing a fit. Tom, would you hush? Dadgum. Sorry about that, y'all. You can clearly see how ruined this lower control arm is. This should be straight across here. Both of these should be in a flat plane. This one just kind of bent down, and this one just completely folded on this side. And it actually split it apart right here in the weld across the bottom as well. So totally folded it up. Of course, that big Chrysler lower ball joint, it's just wrecked. Of course, I've got a new stud to go in there. It's not a problem. But I was going to show you this. So, like, normally, one of the things that I would always do, I used, like, on stock lower control arms, I use the solid bushings. And usually, if you bend up, you know, the actual mount points and stuff, you'll no longer rotate like you should. Like, you'll get that same as an upper control arm where that the shaft is bent. You know, if you've actually twisted a mount or something, then that is now not going to do this. But these with the heim joints will fool you, because the heim joints can each swivel independently. So that can be bent on one of them and this still move. But I've actually relocated, because that has been bent. Now this ball joint's not in the same spot anymore, and so I put everything back together with the exact same slugs and everything, and my caster and camber numbers have changed on me, and a lot of other stuff could possibly be, you know, like, be different because of that. So I can't just trust that that moves before I throw the new one on. Let me get this thing off here right quick. Take a look. There's that side. Just leave you sitting there for now. This side. Out, maybe. All right, so here's my 1/2-inch rod that I used. I welded washers on these, you know, and like re-drilled and squared them all up. And so I take this rod, put it back in here, and I think I've got this where it all clears. And so the question is, will that steel slide all the way through? It is, I can't tell. How close are you? Are you close or not? Oh, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I might have had a 32nd of an inch there on that front one where it was kind of bumping the end of it, kind of twisted and gone in it there a little bit. So that could be from that impact, you know, a little bit. Maybe it twisted that hole just a little bit. Another thing I got to do is I got to make sure that those bolts are still straight. On these, I'm using grade 8s across right there, and I'll just take and put them in there on the shop on some flat steel that I know straight, and just roll them across and make sure they're straight. But that's close enough. I'm not going to re-drill and weld a washer just for that little bit right there where it pushed in that hole. I'm not going to re-drill for that. If it had been off, you know, 1/8 of an inch, you know, if it had been off, like, you know, I couldn't get it in there, yeah, I would have took and re-drilled and put a washer, you know, and reworked that. But like that little bit you saw me do there, no, I'm not gonna worry about it for that little bit. I saw something on the back that tells me I got a problem, but I wanted to look at these bearings as well. But I want to show you what I saw on the back first. So I paint all of these spindles, and I've always painted them, and all my paint is cracked around the top here, all the way around, which kind of makes sense, because if I took a really, really hard hit in the bottom, it twisted that spindle. And in order for that paint to crack, that means that spindle had to have actually shifted in this casting right here, because all of that's cracked the whole way around, which it took a really hard hit. And I don't have, I'm sure they make devices to check the straightness, and I don't have a device for that. But of course, and I mean, they're tough, don't get me wrong. So it's not like I can see anything, but I'm not naive. I know good and well if I see that crack the whole way around there, because the way this works is this forged spindle right here, the heat, this is all, they may press it all together cold, or this may be hot and it's pressed in, I'm not sure. But this piece right here is pressed into this cast piece right here. And that has definitely moved. I can see by the paint all the way around it that it's moved, which I've already ordered. I got a new one sitting over here we'll look at in a minute. But the other thing I want to look at, otherwise everything looks fine. She's done. But then I wondered, when you take a really hard impact like that, do I actually get an imprint in my bearings? And as you'll see, the only grease I've got is what's actually around the bearing right here. There's not a bunch of grease down in here. But I just wondered, I went ahead and bought new races and new bearings as well. Because if you take a hit hard enough, you know, that you're just folding everything in on the car, well, all of that transferred through a very, very small surface on the edge of every one of those needles right there. Like every bit of that transferred through. Specifically this smaller, because if you hit from the outside and you push in, well, that would have transferred into the back one. Okay. All right, so I won't see it in the front one. I had to think about that for a second. I hit from the outside and I'm pushing this rotor down, which means that bottom bearing is the one taking the impact. If I was hitting from the inside of the tire out, that would be this smaller one. So I'm going to set this one aside. Sit it right there. Let's turn it over. And let's get... Oh, I got to get that seal out in order to do that. Remember, if these seals are in good shape, you're doing maintenance, regular maintenance on your bearings, taking them out, cleaning them, and then adding grease back to them. You can take these seals out and reuse them. You got to be cool. You can't be manhandling them. You got to be easy with them. But yeah, and I got a paint scraper right here, totally flat on one side, sharpened to a wedge on the other. I put the wedge side down, just walk it around. Take your time, don't go crazy, don't go twisting up one spot. They're not very expensive. I keep extras anyway, but you know, like I've said before, $3 or $4 here, $3 or $4 there. If it's a perfectly good seal, don't ruin it. There's no point in it. All right, so about to the width of a screwdriver. Let me see. Then I'll just start walking it up. Because if you pull it with a seal puller from the inside, you will ruin it. You can't pull these with a seal puller without ruining them. It's not enough lip under there to get on. Okay, yep. And that thing is perfectly fine. No reason to throw that away. It's not that old either. Now, what I was wanting to look at was this, is what I wondered. Okay, so every bit of the hit went on these rollers on the back, which probably would never see it on the rollers. I guess you could, like a little flat on the roller, like as I roll them over and look. If I saw a little flat, but I think if I see it, it's going to be like imprints in the race, like little marks. I think if it was there, that's where it would be. I would see it as... I may not even be able to feel them, but I could see them. So that's what I wondered about. And I don't want to... Like I said, I went ahead and bought new bearings just to be safe, but... Because, you know, never take a chance. That's smooth as a baby's butt, y'all. Huh. Well, I know that was a hard hit. I mean, I know that was a really hard hit. But... that thing is like new money, which these are good bearings. What are these? These are Timkins. Yeah, these are Timkins. Oh, man. I don't know if I'm going to replace that. I said I was going to just replace them, but dang, it's perfect. And it's done got polished out now. Okay, I'm going to use them. I'm going to use them. Executive decision has been made. We're going to use them. I have pulled these, so let's see. This car this season's got about 15 races on it, and I think that I've had these out twice, maybe 3 times, so I'm averaging, I'd say, I think I've done it twice. So probably I'm going 7 or 8 races before I pop these loose. Put them in the parts washer, wash them off, put grease back in the rollers around them, put them back in. That's all I'm doing. I was sitting here thinking to myself, I knew I had to order those bearings for some reason. I went ahead and ordered both, but I knew I had to order one. And I was sitting here looking at this new spindle and this one, and then it dawned on me. The outside bearing is different between these. So if you're fooling with the 7377 mid-size GM or any of your Generation 2 Camaros, there are two different size spindles. The housings themselves are the same, but like the 7377 mid-size GM frame or the, let's see, 73 to 79 Camaro, all of them have got this spindle, and it has got the 2-inch seal, the 1.25 inch back bearing, but then the front bearing is 3/4 of an inch. And then over here on the let's see, I think it's the 80 and 81 Camaro, it's specifically different, and that's like, this is a QA1 spindle because it's aftermarket. This is the only thing I can get now. And this one right here, it's the same 2 inches on the back, or it's like 202, like in 5/1000ths or something. But anyway, it's 2 inches. And then it's 1.25 inches right here. And then right here, it's like 845 or something. So what would that be? Let's see, that would be plus 3/32 over 3/4 of an inch. So whatever that fractional is, it's not any of that. So I don't know. I'm not doing the math on the fraction, y'all. I can just tell you. Yeah, it's like 850 instead of 750, which is fine. It's just a totally different bearing. And you can really get yourself jammed up. Make sure that if you have to change this, if you change a spindle, anytime when you're dealing with these two, you have to change the race. And it'll really get you, because this race will appear, there's the bearing that's supposed to go in this race here. This is the larger race. And this is the bearing that was on this one, and both of them sit in there. One sits much deeper, and those needles are not correctly aligned on that cone for that race. So bearing and race, because the races on the outside are exactly the same, and like you're taking and you swap between these, and you just take the bearing itself, and you're like, oh, I'm not fooling with that race, and you just swap the bearing itself and not the race, you're going to get failure. And you're going to get failure like pretty quick, because now you're running on like an edge of that needle bearing instead of across the flat. It just can't take it. It can't take the pressure. You'll eat it up. And then you'll be like, why did that bearing fail early? Because you did it. All right, so anyway, got to get that out right quick so I know which is which. Put that right there. And of course, I sat here and put the back together, which doesn't matter. All right, so I'm taking a punch. I'm getting right in here on the bottom of that. They make a tool to do this. Yep. I ain't got it. I ain't gonna go get it. I ain't worried about it. Just going around it and driving it out right quick. You see me just walking around this thing like that right there. You'll see that. See how that punches on the end. It's got to be pretty small to do it. Okay, so here's this race. Sit you right there. It's tight. Yeah, they're the same size on the outside, but on the inside, that's different. All right, so here's the new one. So you go. That's clean, no marks. Ooh, that's gonna be tight. Ooh, yeah, boy, that fits nice. Okay, so then this one goes in here. There we go. All right, fully seated, never hit it. I just used the old race. Of course, y'all already know the correct way to do that is to use a press. I don't have a press in my shop. I just don't have the room for it, y'all. I know y'all gonna give me grief about that, but yeah, I just get by. I got a couple of presses around. My son's got a press at work and stuff when I have to have one, but I just knock it in. Just make sure if you drive one in, you know, like that with a maul or something, just make sure that you're not actually getting on the surface of it. scarring it up. Because if you scar it up, you know, you got to get you another one. But yeah, little Lucas red and tacky right here. Of course, I just greased the bearing itself. I pushed down in there just on the bearing. Put a little light coat on there around it. And drop it in. And that's it. I don't pack grease down in around the hub or nothing like that. Like just what's on the bearing, that's all it needs. I probably put more on that one than it needed, to be honest. But that is good to go. And before I put this all together, I have got to drill out that arm to 5/8 for my bolt, because he's a hime joint. So let's set you to the side and put a drill bit in over here, get that drilled right quick, and we'll put that thing together. Okay, let's see if we can get this knocked out right quick without too much trouble. I got my Hal 2-piece upper ball joint here apart, and I looked at it at the track and looking at it here. It looks straight. I don't think the upper took a hit at all, but there is one sure way I can tell. That is, I'm gonna chuck this up right quick. Not gonna really tighten that down on the threads. Yeah, it is fine. Just spin it in the drill. That's an easy way to tell. Yep, I'm amazed. All that hit went into the bottom. So upper ball joint is fine. There's no marks, no dings on it. It's good to go. Put it back together. Set the tension back on it. I've got to open this hole up on the top of this spindle here for the taper. It's the same angle, but it needs to be larger. And last time I tried to do it on the drill press, it just didn't really go that well. I'm going to freehand it this time, but yeah, I need to go down. I need this ball joint to go down about 1/2 inch. And I have got the 10-degree taper here. Yeah, and the bottom of the taper is not even clear on the bottom of the hole. It's right there at it. So I'm going to see if I can't just let it follow the hole and do it. Cutting juice here. I'm just going to do it like this. These tapered bits are not cheap, so I don't want to mess it up. Oh yeah, I can see the gray line where it's working its way down in there. I'm feeling for the bottom of that bit when it's cleared the bottom of that hole. That's what I'm doing there. Alright, it's cleared the bottom of the hole. Let's see how that looks. Hopefully it hasn't went too far. Okay, so I just got to put the nut on there and make sure that cotter pin will go through. If the cotter pin won't go through with the nut, then obviously I got to go a little bit deeper. But yeah, taper's right. Feels good to me. Okay, so here's another thing. So the shock mount, it got folded over. But where that shock mount is at is important because my shock has got to clear. I have to clear my spindle, but then also, you know, I have to clear, you know, the spring and the mat, you know, the upper control arm and all of that as well. So you can't just throw this thing back on here. You got to really be paying attention to like where you put this, because I got to place a new one on the new mount as well. So we have to measure that. It's the details that will kill you on this stuff. So like I'm just going to take from the edge of the sleeve to the center of it. Mine is 2 inches is where it's at. And buddy, that is pretty dang close to the bottom of that spindle as well. But that's what we'll do. We'll put the new one on the new. Let me grab it, I'll show you. Yeah, so I got here's the new control arm right here. And I've got a new mount here. So main thing, make sure I don't have any imprints or damage, because daggone, y'all, look at there. That is a really thick stud to be bent like that too. Whew. You gotta check, because sometimes like if it's overextended, it can be busted out on that edge. And that's no good, because then they'll be cracked there, and then what'll happen is it'll all just implode, come apart, ball pull out of it, and then you're gonna go for a ride. That would not be good. All right, I'm gonna throw this back in my lower control arm as soon as the paint dries. And we'll throw it all together. Now I want to talk about that shock. Don't run off. I changed shocks. I didn't change brand shock. There's no way I'd ever run anything besides a BSB product. But I did talk to Mr. J and got him to make a slight change on rebound. I've been watching all my film and really thinking about how I'm driving and what the car's doing. And I think I can make the car work with me a little better with a little bit of adjustment on that. So I'll cover that in just a second. See how tight these are. Yeah, it's rough. Well, it slides in there. Now it slides. Thought that might be a little tight, but it wasn't. Let's see how this one is. That was perfect. The back one's just a hair tight. I'm gonna give her a little tap back. Just a little bit where she'll slide. Yeah, that'll work. That'll work. These Rodney and them down there at Wildnut Motorsports, when they make these, he's taking that tube and clearancing it a little bit. He's putting a little bit of extra room, so it's not really, I don't know how much that's got. There's a little bit of clearance intentionally been put in that. I don't know if I like that so much, but it seems like a lot, but it probably just makes them work better on everybody's application. I'm sure he's got a good reason to do that. Probably if it was as tight as I would think I want it, I probably would have problems. I'm sure there is a legit reason for that. But this is all steel on steel, so I'm going to make sure that all this bare steel has got grease, because it would sure freeze up if I didn't have a coating on everything. And what I've been doing on these, I'm not taking it apart every time. Like when I wash and I power wash all this, I'm not breaking all this down. And there's not alamites here, and I don't have a bolt that has an alamite with like needle holes coming out of the bolt or nothing like that. I've just been taking just like the spray grease. Well, not the spray grease. I've been using the spray penetrating oil. The same thing I do on the shocks. I don't spray grease on my shocks now. I've been spraying penetrating oil on them. And I'm just soaking everything down. And like when I took mine apart looking at it, I still had the grease, you know, kind of up in here where I hadn't washed it out. But, you know, I don't think I can go all season doing that. I think, you know, it's like I had taken these off about midway through the season, you know, and cleaned everything and stuff. And they had dirt all up in here around. But then you got your heim joint that it actually rotates on. So I don't know. They're kind of just holding it in position. So, you know, nothing's got an alamite to like grease it constantly or anything like that. So you definitely have got to do maintenance on stuff. Look at that. But just what I've been doing is just the spray can of the penetrating oil. Soak it down. Same thing I've been doing on my shocks. I wash my shocks, take a pressure washer and wash the heim ends real good, and then I soak them back down with penetrating oil just to really kind of keep them clean. And then when they're wore out, replace them. All right. If I can get one in, get a bolt in it, then I can fool with the other one. All right, long bolt in the front. Come on. Oh, looky there. Come on. Go. Treat it. Oh, don't do it. Oh, that come out. See how this will rotate on those heim joints? That's the reason that you wouldn't know if your holes got out of alignment. You wouldn't really know it with a rig like this right here. But I think it still would affect your settings and everything, so you should check for it. All right, you can see I'm finishing up here. I didn't have any volume on this clip for some reason. Basically, I'm setting my weight jack right there back to the original height like it was. I still would put this car back on the scales, of course, before it was all over, make sure my ride heights and everything are exactly where they were. But the main thing I wanted to cover here was this shock right here. And of course, you see I had knocked the end out of the shock, and that's where I had the wheel had overcompressed, collapsed it too far. That's the base valve that's tore out of position there in the top of it. That is the Gorilla Fist 500 rebound shock from BSB with the base valve. And it's not complete junk. More than likely, because the shaft itself slides great. It doesn't look bent or anything like that. Of course, I'm going to send it back to BSB. They've got the devices to, for example, check and see if the shaft is still within tolerance for straightness, the valves, all of the different parts, because it may be that I can just have repair work done, and that's going to be a lot more cost effective than just having a new one built. And I only had this one 500. My other shock that I had was an 800. And so I went ahead and I called Mr. J, and this is where I want to talk about a difference in the shock. So I was running this 500 with the base valve on the right front, and everything started clicking, everything started getting a lot better. But I've been watching my videos and watching my driving and where I was running into problems. And I asked Mr. J to build me a 600 Gorilla Fist instead of a 500. Because what I'm seeing is that when I can get the car to set correctly and stay on the right front, the car is really good in the corner, and I can throttle up and just drive through and just pick up speed as I exit the corner, and I can just tell, and I can see it in my lap times when everything sticks and works right, the car is significantly faster. But I'm struggling as a driver to be able to keep the car on that right front nose long enough. And what's happening is for sometimes I'm not quite getting the car set right, or I'll think I've got the car set into the corner correctly, and then the nose will lift a little early on me, and I'll have to reset the car, or I'll have to throttle up and kick the rear end out a little bit, because the car will start pushing up the track on me, in the middle of the corner. And watching my video, I've seen several times where this is happening. Now, this could be driver. I'm just be very clear about it. It could be me, but I believe a little more rebound on the right front will help me deal with that. And it's going to help me be able to more consistently get the car to stay down on the right front long enough so that I get that smooth, throttle up through the middle and corner exit off. A better driver that could consistently stick the car correctly on entry, they would be able maybe to be faster with that 500. But I'm going to be faster with a little more rebound, I believe, because if it helps me to, always be able to stick the car, I'm not going to have one lap that's a really great lap time, and the next lap I'm a half a second off because I let the nose get away from me. So for that reason, I went to the 600 on the rebound. So what we're talking about is it's got more strength to hold the right front down, 100 pounds more strength to hold the right front down. The other thing I did, I was just running the base valve. I added also the SRT valve, and so I compared links there. It's exact same housing, exact same size of shock, so no difference in the mount heights and stuff that I did. I don't have to change anything. The reason that I added the SRT is because that valving added to the shock helps the shock to be able to better deal with any type of a hole or a rut, to just keep the tire contacted to the track, when you're running these shocks that have got this real aggressive valving in them and stuff. And so the base valve part, no doubt, y'all, the way that it lets you run that much lower gas pressure, there's a lot of feel in the shock. I can tell the difference. To me, the car feels a lot more like my Camaro with oil shocks when I've run it. It's got that feel more like it's got oil shocks on it, where the car just feels a lot more limber and a lot more responsive on the corners. It doesn't feel so stiff to me anymore. And I attribute that to the base valves. And talking with Mr. J, as well with BSB, he explained that it is a difference in feel is the main thing you're going to immediately notice. I agree with that wholeheartedly. So I recommend them if you can afford them. It does add some cost to the shocks, but if your rules allow it, there is definitely a competitive difference by going to the base valves. Adding the SRT, hopefully it's just going to help me deal with any issues on a particular track surface, for me to just be a little bit more consistent. When I record my setup and do the full setup sheet and everything, I take a lot of extra measurements, and not every time just because I put it on the scales, but when I'm setting the car and going through everything, I write down a lot of extra measurements. And right now I've got a measurement that's really helping, because I measured how much that jack bolt sticks up out the top above that lock nut that I put on there. And man, that is saving me some grief right now. Now I got the car sitting back on the scale so I can verify. Now I've got about 20 or 25 pounds of left rear bite in this car with that soft left rear spring, but of course I've got it on the scales, you know, so that I can verify that. But I should get really close just by going back to the exact same number again on my measurement. I think, yep, that's it. 2056, that's close enough. Okay, so I'm gonna lock that down, put it all back together. Make sure if I'm anywhere around 20 or 25 pounds of left rear bite, I'm fine. If right now I go over there and it was showing 10 pounds, or if it was showing 50 pounds or something, I'd probably go back through, switch out, put the 175 spring back in the left rear, just go back through the setup on it. Yeah, total disaster cost on this, $1,000, $1,100, something like that. I'll do a breakdown on it, cause like, yeah, this crate racing street stock, this is a very expensive class when you start bolting on the higher end parts. That was a tough mistake right there for me.